Hey everybody, my name is Philip. Earlier this year I decided to read the Bible from front to end, all the way through, and I really just wanted to capture here a little video journal of where I'm at, what I'm reading, and what I'm learning. Really the intention is to just learn more about the character of God and be able to find lessons that He has for me that I can live out in my life today. So I hope these videos are beneficial for you in some way, and I hope you enjoy them. Welcome back, everyone. We are in 2 Kings chapter 5. Another big one. But we are in 2 Kings chapter 5. And this chapter tells us the story of a man named Naaman. Now, Naaman is a military big shot. He's not just your average soldier. He's basically the commander-in-chief of the armies of Aram, the kingdom of Aram. He's probably got medals and honor and power and fame and all this stuff. But there's just one tiny problem. He has leprosy. Leprosy. It's like, congratulations on all your success. Here's a lifelong skin disease. So that probably puts a damper on things for him. Certainly puts a damper on the image of the hero of the nations that he would like to have. But who comes to his rescue? A small Israelite girl who's captured during one of the raids from Aram. She's brought back, and now she finds herself as a servant in Naaman's household. So she says to Naaman's wife, in verse 3, "One day the girl said to her mistress, 'I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy.'" Because when life gives you leprosy, you take your medical advice from a captive. So Naaman basically takes this pro tip from this little girl, and he says, "Say less, I'm going to do it." He packs up some gold, some silver, some fine clothing, and he says, "I'm going to go see this prophet." So he takes a letter from the king of Aram. He delivers it to the king of Israel. It's basically an introductory letter that says, "Hey, could you heal this man of his leprosy? No big deal, no pressure, you got it." So the king of Israel, he gets scared, and in verse 7 he says, "This man sends me a leper to heal. Am I God that I can give life and take it away? I can see he's just trying to pick a fight with me." So he's basically saying, now what is this man trying to pull? This feels like a setup. Seems silly, but these are the kinds of things that could start a war, and he's scared. But Elisha, the prophet, he hears about this. He sends a messenger to the king of Israel, and he says, "Hey, chill out. Don't worry about it. Send Naaman to me. I'll take care of this. We're going to prove to him that there's a true prophet of God in Israel." So Naaman shows up with all his people, his entourage, if you will, and he's expecting Elisha to come out. He's expecting fireworks, a dramatic display of healing, maybe a fog machine. He's expecting this big moment. But Elisha doesn't even come out. He sends his servant out instead. In verse 10 says, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy." How does Naaman react? He's furious. He's upset. He wanted fireworks. He wanted Elisha to come out. He wanted Elisha to wave his hands around dramatically and say, "Begone, leprosy! Begone!" But that's not what happened, and so he's upset. He's like, now I'm supposed to go bathe in this muddy creek, the Jordan River? He says in verse 12, "Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed?" So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. So one of Naaman's servants come to him with logic, and they say, "Sir, if Elisha had asked you to do something really difficult, like climb Mount Everest or compete in an Ironman triathlon, wouldn't you have done those things if it meant healing for you? But he asked you to take a bath, and that's simply beneath you now?" Naaman goes, "Wow, touche. You're absolutely right. Let's do it." So he goes, he dips in the water 7 times at the Jordan River, and it says in verse 14, his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. So Naaman, he's grateful now. He's like, I'm basically a skincare influencer at this point. So he goes back to Elisha and he says, "Thank you so much. Please, accept one of my gifts. Gold, silver, clothing, whatever you want, it's yours." But Elisha says, no, thank you. He says, "Okay, but I am going to take some dirt from this place, because from here going forward, I am only going to worship the God of Israel." And Elisha says, "Perfect, go in peace." But the story doesn't end there. Elisha's servant Gehazi, you remember Gehazi, He sees all that gold and silver and fine clothing just walking away, and he gets greedy. He decides to go after Naaman without telling Elisha, and he goes after Naaman and he says, actually, Elisha changed his mind. There's a couple of young prophets coming from the hill country, and he would like some of that silver, and he would like some of those cool outfits that you brought. So Naaman is like, absolutely, take them. He gives him double of what he asked for. He sends Gehazi back to Elisha with silver and clothing. So Gehazi gets back, and in verse 25, Elisha says, where have you been, Gehazi? And I just imagine Gehazi with all this stuff in his arms going, what? What do you mean? What do you mean, where have I been? I haven't gone anywhere. But in verse 26, Elisha says, don't you realize that I was there in spirit when Naaman stepped down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to receive money and clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and cattle, male and female servants? Because you have done this, you and your descendants will suffer from Naaman's leprosy forever. Forever? That's a long time. All right, what can we learn from this passage today? I think that this story shows that God's grace goes beyond physical boundaries. What I mean by that is here's Naaman, a commander of the armies of a country that is in a lot of ways hostile towards Israel, but God still chooses to heal him. He uses this small captive Israelite girl to point Naaman to the healer, to point Naaman to the prophet of God to receive healing. And through Naaman, he was able to show that it doesn't matter if you're a part of Israel or not a part of Israel, I still can showcase my power and I can still extend grace, regardless of where you're at. So for us today, we might look at someone around us and say, ooh, they're way too far gone. No way that God could reach them. There's no way that God could stir their heart and bring them to him. But I think God has shown us time and time again that no matter how far gone someone might be, he can always draw them back to him. I think we as believers have to do our part and share the gospel and let God do the rest. It says in Romans 10:13 that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. It doesn't say everyone who is in a particular religious group or a particular culture or lives in a particular country. It says everyone, all-encompassing, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And I think the story of Naaman is a cool picture of the good news of Jesus, that God's love is for everyone, regardless of where you're at or how far gone you are. God's love is for everyone. All you have to do is call on the name of the Lord, believe that God sent his son, Jesus, to this earth as a man, died on the cross for our sins, and rose from the dead 3 days later. The second thing I thought I saw here was that obedience can lead to miracles, even when the instructions don't make a ton of sense to us. Naaman was asked to bathe in this river, and his immediate reaction was like, that's disgusting, dude. Isn't there a better way of doing this? And the servant talked to him and basically convinced him to just do it. It's not that hard. And Naaman, despite his initial hesitation, he decided to, I'm going to obey. I'm going to go ahead and do what I was asked to do. And because of that, he received healing. And I think for us, those quiet moments of obedience, spending time with the Lord, reading his word, in prayer, confessing our sins, forgiving each other when we mess up with each other, those small acts of obedience, I think, go a long way in the miracles that we may see in our life. And lastly, I think that what Gehazi's story shows us is that greed can be a very destructive thing, and we have to guard ourselves against that. So what we saw here in this story was Gehazi wasn't willing to let these gifts just walk away. He's like, I want those for myself. And so he went, he lied, he said, Elisha actually wants this stuff after all. He wanted to get some of that stuff for himself. And because of that, he was given the disease that Naaman was just healed from. I think God calls us to a life of integrity. He calls us to live a life of contentment, to not always be chasing after more, but looking around and saying, man, look at all the cool blessings that I have in my life. And that's not to say that you can't dream and you can't want more things, but you just have to be careful not to let greed rule your life. It can lead you down a very destructive path of discontentment or being dishonest in order to achieve those things. So those are the things that I learned today in this passage. I hope it was helpful in some way, and as always, won't he do it? Hey everybody.